Hello and welcome to Corpse Club. This is your co-host Brian Christopher, and we are here for our final installment of the Phantasm series retrospective, which means, of course, I have with me my forever and ever best friend, life mate, flying ball fighter, tall man, fender, Hemi driving, kind of quasi long hair, but with a bald patch on top, best friend Scott Drebit. How you doing, Scott?
Just a sitting here at midnight.
Do.
And I'll be sitting here till noon.
Do.
You see, my baby left me lonely.
Yes, she did.
You see, my baby left me blue.
Do. Okay, we're not going to do the whole guitar solo, but I would like everybody to know that was 100% impromptu, including my voice breaking during one of the musical interludes. So,
it's not often. I mean, I don't like to bring forward my musical gifts just because I don't want it to overshadow my podcasting abilities. So that's why I don't do that.
Perfectly understandable.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We are going to wrap this up in, what can we say, a PH fun fashion. Correct, Brian?
Fun fashion, indeed.
Fun fashion.
And it will be, we started this series as a duo. We've decided we will end it as a duo. We're going to talk obviously about Ravager, but I think we're also just going to wrap things up with a general series wrap up and just kind of what it means to us and all that good stuff. But before we get to that,
sorry, I was just going to say, no bald patch. It's not important, but there's no bald patch.
Of all the things that I said in that incoherent mess, that was the thing that you flagged.
Well,
oh man. All right. So anybody who has stuck around this long knows what they're getting into.
I stopped receding when I was about 35, about your age. I stopped receding. So I've been lucky. Sorry.
No, I wonder if that means there's hope for me because I've my hairline is definitely retreating towards the back of my head. But oddly enough, I've also decided to start growing my hair out a little bit. So I don't know, maybe I will wind up looking like Reggie within the next few years.
You never know.
One can only hope.
I am.
So yes, tonight or this morning, or whenever the hell you're watching it, we are talking Phantasm Ravager, the finale and fifth film of the Phantasm series, and one that's it's hard to say if it's divisive, mainly because I just don't think if anybody's stuck around for this fifth movie, they're probably, for the most part, a fan, and are willing to let a lot of the issues that might that the film might have go. From what I heard, though, the few people who were at best casual fans who came into this movie gave it a big WTF. So we'll address that.
Yeah, I gotta say a big hey, holy shit, pass the salt, because I rewatched this just the other day, and as you know, I was of one opinion of Ravager, which is I considered it a victory lap and a very enjoyable one for the whole gang. I have new and improved thoughts even after this rewatch. There is a part of me, maybe it's in another alternate dimension, that accepts this fifth installment as the fifth installment. I paid closer attention this time to the story itself, which, without question, once you get past the first 15 minutes of this movie, and we're saying this as like the biggest fans, it's kind of rough. The first 15 are kind of rough. But as soon as it hits the nursing home.
Okay. Let's not get too deep into it because I'm very much of a same mind. But we gotta set the table a little bit, buddy. Gotta set the table a little bit.
This is the Phantasm universe. There's 16 tables currently going at once.
One just wrapped up. The other one is setting the table.
I'm trying to set the other one over there. Yeah. Okay, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's one that's actually like a bocce ball court. It's not dinner at all.
It sounds nice, actually.
All kinds of stuff going on.
But I'm sorry, I'll calm down. You set the table, good sir.
So we have to kind of catch up. What led us here in the first 4 movies? So over the course of 4 movies in as many decades, Mike, Jody, and Reggie have been battling the Tall Man and his multi-dimensional minions. They've been buried the Tall Man in boulders. They've injected him with acid lace embalming fluid, frozen him, even blew him up with a hearse. But time after time, he's been coming back, and at the end of Oblivion, it seems like he might have finally gotten the better of our boys as he forced Mike to kill his brother again and yanked out Mike's mind via the golden sphere that had manifested there. And the last we see of Reggie, he's desperately following Mike and the Tall Man into dimensions unknown. And so there was a time where folks thought that was the ending. And, as we talked about in the last episode, that was, for me, disappointing. Looking back on it in hindsight, if we had never gotten a 5th one, 4 would be very satisfying. But as is the case with Phantasm, it just kind of keeps lingering and kind of lurking under the surface and comes back every decade or two. And in this case, there were nearly 2 decades of false starts. In 2006, there were talks of New Line doing a soft relaunch. In 2007, I don't know if you remember this, Scott, they shot that footage for Alamo Drafthouse. They had, it was both A. Michael Baldwin and Angus Scrimm came back to shoot this little kind of quick vignette. So it had everybody talking about like, ooh, does this mean they're getting the band back together?
Yeah. No, it was, I think it was probably about that time or before then, when the internet really started to pick up for me, at least for me anyway. It was probably the early 2000s is when I got my first computer. So I think the first site that I got on was Phantasm.com.
Love it.
Right? Which is still going. With pretty much the same design, if I recall, but God bless them. They're still going. But yeah, so I would always, with limited idea of what to do with this internet, I of course hyper-focused it on just, Phantasm updates. So I would watch that Phantasm.com website like constantly for updates. And yeah, I remember that stuff 2006, 2007. And for those of us longtime fans by that time already, 10 years had already passed almost since Oblivion. And we already knew, Angus Scrimm at an advanced age already in Oblivion. The other guys, of course, younger, with Reggie Bannister being the second oldest. But so, you start to, as you said, kind of accept that, okay, Oblivion is the end. And me, I was very much happy and satisfied with Oblivion being the ending of the series. But hope always springs eternal, and these kernels would show up every once in a while, and we would get excited, and nothing would happen. We had, of course, Roger Avery's script for Phantasm's End, which caused a stir, and something we'll definitely explore talking about Ravager, because there is some of that DNA inside Ravager.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally, which is something that I really noticed this time around. So by the time we heard official rumblings that they were shooting stuff.
And this would have been around 2012, 2013, the rumors
Yeah.
started again.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And I also like to think that, because I was also obsessively checking, and to put this in perspective, and Scott, I swear to God, I'm doing this to kind of show time passing. I'm not trying to make you feel old, but when Oblivion came out, I was just going into high school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so before we got anything even resembling like a whisper of, like, by the time the Alamo Drafthouse, I had gotten through high school and college without anything, any possibility of new Phantasm. And so, like, we're talking by the time stuff, the time between the fourth Phantasm and the last Phantasm, we're talking about someone in high school being well into his 30s. So it's kind of wild. And also it's wild considering that it went from like whispers and rumors to, in 2014, David Hartman and Don Coscarelli announced that not only were they doing another one, but it was almost done. Like, they had been doing this kind of guerrilla shooting style, piece by piece, very similar to how they made the first one process. And they had kind of chipped away at it, and they were ready, just about to put it in the can. And by 2015, it was looking for a distributor. And by 2016, Well Go Entertainment released it, I believe, in October. So you might be listening to this right around the 5th year anniversary of Phantasm Ravager, actually.
Ooh, fantastic serendipity, perhaps?
Why not?
Why not?
Well, it certainly wasn't careful planning on our part, because that's not our thing at all.
It's not our forte, no.
So that leads me into our first time watching Phantasm Ravager. And I remember mine very distinctly, but I would like to hear yours first.
Okay. I saw it on streaming. I was in a hotel room on a business trip 2016. I believe that's correct. Anyway, so on my laptop was my viewing experience, which I would imagine it was for quite a few people. My first impressions of it were, like I said, those first 15 minutes, which, if I'm correct, were the first two mini web SFX reels that David Hartman put together to test out some stuff, and using Reggie, and then the story proper, which kind of makes sense, because then a story proper comes along. But yeah, so even on that first time watch, that first 15 minutes, I was a little, my heart sunk a little bit. But then it gets to the nursing home. Mm-hmm. And when it does, excuse me, it really grounds the series and upends the series in a way that I simply wasn't expected. But we'll get to that, because we're just talking first impressions right now. And so I was really into the nursing home stuff, and then I actually quite enjoyed, even on first viewing, a lot of David Hartman's digital landscapes, like when they go to the Red Planet. I think that looks great, because, and again, we're all over the place here, but like we said, there's many tables and many water pitchers that we got to fill. But yeah, no budget at all, but a pretty broad imagination and big imagination. And this is the first movie that truly expands it into an actual universe.
Or universes.
Or universes, exactly. And does, of course, all the same show. They had literally no money. But my God, the imagination is all there.
Mm-hmm.
The story is there. You know, if Ravager is the movie that you really need to know about it going in, knowing how it was made,
Mm-hmm.
and make that your template on how to enjoy it,
How you're going to consume
and
it
to get the most out of it, because otherwise, you know, yeah, you're just punching down.
Absolutely. And
because there's no, sorry, I'll just one more quick
Sure.
thought. Because there's no question that if you gave this same amount of money, which was minuscule, to another group of, let's say, a group of green filmmakers, some young Turks, and see what they can do with it, and what kind of film they make, as opposed to, you know, a couple veterans of their craft. Yeah, they've gone down in grading on their paintbrushes, but the artists are the same, right?
Exactly. And I will say that for me, my first time watching this was actually kind of parallel to yours. Like, there's a lot of serendipity tonight. So I wasn't on a business trip. I was actually on an anniversary trip with my wife. We had gone to upstate New York, and we were staying at like an Airbnb or something like that. She had called it a night, and I decided that I was going to stay up and watch Ravager, because I had been anticipating it for a long time, and you know, I wanted to finally catch it. I was also watching it on a laptop and had virtually the same experience as you, where the first 15 minutes was like, oh no, like, am I is this just gonna absolutely ruin my weekend? And then obviously, because, you know, I'm me, ruin my wife's weekend too, because I'm just going to be sulking about over the crappy Phantasm movie. But like you said, when he hits that nursing home, things take a turn for the better. And, you know, I think we have to get you've already talked about this a little bit, but the crappy looking elephant in the room is that they were working with a budget. They didn't have like an official number out, but the word is that it was around $300,000, which is the same that the original film had to work with back in 1978. So, you know, if adjusted for inflation, in 1978 they were working with a little over $1 million, as opposed to, you know, the $300,000 in 2015 that they were working with for Ravager. You know, and there's some other things at work here too. This is the first film that's not directed by Don Coscarelli. However, he did. You know, you mentioned David Hartman. David Hartman was the director, but he and Coscarelli co-wrote. So I definitely think there's a sense, while some of the visual aesthetic might stray from Coscarelli, the story very much has Coscarelli's fingerprints on it.
Yeah, and not only that, but what I was excited about before I saw it, and I think it's mostly pulled off, was David Hartman's background as an animator. Mm-hmm. And heavily steeped in horror, and so I was excited. I thought, okay, at least there's going to be someone who's going to think visual, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not going to be Don, then at least it's someone who's going to think visual. And I think that really shows and is most effective when they go to the Red Planet. When Mike, and when a version of Mike and a version of Reggie and a version of Dude go to the Red Planet. I think it's very effective. And like I said before, you know, this is the movie that, with the least budget, decides to make the biggest movie.
Well, and I think the funniest thing too is that, you know, we both agree that the first 15 minutes of this movie are its roughest. And part of I think there's a couple things at play there. First, you kind of have to, it's like getting into that hot tub where you have to, especially now that we've been doing this series and we've been watching the Coscarelli films in a row, there's a little bit of a different flavor with this one. So there's a little bit of, you kind of have to settle yourself and regroove into the couch cushion. There's also, I think, Hartman's style lends itself more towards the fantastical. So when you have no budget and you're trying to do things that are like quote unquote in the real world, i.e. the sphere scenes, trying to do these scenes and kind of make them look realistic, it's a combination of absolutely no budget, and maybe that's not really Hartman's forte. So, the sphere sequences in the first, act of the movie are very rough.
Okay, Kayla, I'm just going to get out of the way because I truly do love this movie, but good God. You got Daniel Roebuck as the Swedish chef.
What was he doing there? Like, how did they get him involved anyway?
Dieter, my Swedish parents, he was the farmhand. Demeter, yeah, and they died and he stayed with the farm. Okay. Look, Daniel Roebuck is like the goodwill ambassador of horror. and I love the man, and I've loved him in other stuff. I don't love him here. I really, really don't love him here. And it's a silly sequence.
Well, I mean, first the horse, the sphere takes down the horse, and there is some very shaky CGI blood. Like, CGI blood at its best doesn't look good. This was just like cringe-inducing CGI blood, where it just looked like, all of a sudden there's just these like red Microsoft Paint blotches that are spreading out over the screen.
But you know what? And I think a part of it is too, like these first 15 minutes, like I said, I think they are the first 2 webisodes.
Okay.
That Hartman put out there as like.
So basically he put the proof of concept in the movie itself.
Well, he was trying to see how these sphere effects look. So he thought, well, let's do a little Phantasm thingamabobber. So I think once that ends, I think they did those 2 first. And then I think there was a break, as there were many breaks in this. This took, quite some time to do.
As did the first one. It's that taking a weekend, shooting overnight,
But it just seems after this first 15 minutes, there seems to be a reset. His direction gets much better after that first block. And it actually gets pretty good as it goes along. There's some great shots in this, and he gets, I will say, definitely Reggie Bannister's finest performance.
Oh, so good. So good. And this is really, by this point, primarily Reggie's show. That transition has been happening throughout the series. In the first movie, it's Mike. In the second movie, it's, that Buddy Road movie where it's kind of both of them. Unfortunately, Jodie's out of the picture for that whole movie. In the third one, I would say it's almost approaching an ensemble, where you have a little bit of everybody. You got Mike, you got Jodie, you got Reggie, but then you also have, obviously, you got Rocky and Tim. So it's a really good group movie. In 4, they kind of pare it back down to the big 3. And I just think in this last one, though, while Mike and Jodie are both present, this is Reggie's story.
It's definitely Reggie's story, and I think, in a wish list, right, Brian? If this had been made 10 years prior, and then it was a hit, and then they decided to make a follow-up, then the follow-up, the focus could go back a little more towards Mike, but this is very much Reggie's story, and by making it Reggie's story, it pulls everyone in the Phantasm universe through it, because he's been that that needle in the haystack with the black bow tie that's been there from the start, you know?
I do think they also pulled a fast one on us in the beginning. One of the things that I think looked not promising, but I think was deliberate, was when you first see him. So we're picking up almost immediately, or so we think, immediately after 4. And Reggie is kind of coming out of the desert from, you don't really know how he made it out of that dimensional gate. But he's still in his ice cream outfit. And, the costume itself, it's supposed to be tattered. It is, but it also looks like they went out and found like a Reggie, the ice cream man, Halloween costume at like the local Spirit Halloween and slapped that on him. It didn't fit very well. He has the very noticeable hair dye going. And it just, it's like, oh man, are they going to try and do something that they don't have the ability to pull off? But then that carries into that kind of sudden burst into the nursing home, where all of a sudden he's not in that outfit and his natural hair is showing and he's looking his age. And so that's where the movie really kind of starts to come to life.
Well, yeah, it completely comes into focus by losing its focus. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason that my heart sank as the movie opened was I thought, I know this is the last hurrah. I know it because Angus had passed by the time the movie was released to the public. Mm-hmm. So when you know that going in, it makes a huge difference. But one of the other things that I absolutely love about this movie is that once you get, as I said, once you get past that first 15 minutes, it comes into focus and it goes out of focus. For everyone who doesn't know, at a point who hasn't seen Ravager, there's a point in Ravager where Reggie comes to in a nursing home, and he's greeted by Mike, a regular Mike in a tweed jacket with his hair in a ponytail. Reggie has dementia, mm-hmm. but Reggie doesn't know how he got in this nursing home, and Mike only knows of Reggie's past adventures because Reggie's told him about it. So when they drop this, the entire game changes, mm-hmm. and you sit up and note and go, man. Uh-huh. And not only makes you go whoa in like a stoner existential way. That's there too, but it's like, gee whiz, sci-fi. But in this world, this is really the movie that has answers. Mm-hmm. Every other movie, we've gotten questions on top of more questions, and it didn't seem like we were getting answers. But if I am taking Ravager as a continuation, and I have now accepted it into my soul, into my fan soul as a continuation, then this movie actually does offer at the closest we've gotten to some answers. Mm-hmm.
Without ever really giving you any satisfactory answers, which by this point, honest to God, I'm so glad that they didn't. Like, that is, you don't want definitive answers in a Phantasm movie. Yes, this gets the closest to it, but there's still so much left unanswered, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, well, and this is, is the answer maybe an animated series? With our boy Clancy Brown filling in for some tall man. Yeah,
I'd be down for that.
Right, continuing this story, because by the end of this story, we have not only do we have Jody, Reggie, Mike. We got Chunk. We have, who else do we have, Brian?
We have Rocky, but I am very, very conflicted. I'm not even conflicted. I'm mad about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Oh my!
But yeah, I want to keep with the good vibes for now.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yes, this is a movie that opens up the world. You know, it brings it to a conclusion, but there's still a lot of story left. There's a lot, you know, we get new characters, you know, and we get an open-ended movie, but kind of the first one that ends open-ended on a hopeful note, as opposed to either a downer or a stinger.
Oh, by downer, are you talking about Oblivion?
Yes.
I don't know if Oblivion. I don't see Oblivion as a downer ending. I see it as, oh no, I find the ending of Oblivion very comforting. It's only the wind. He's dealt with his trauma, but that's Brian. That's in my old universe, where it ended at 4. No, in this universe, you know, it continued on.
It continued on,
5. It continued on.
I will say I saw, and I don't mean downer as a bad thing, but for me, my mind read that as,
no, I get it.
You know, they talk a lot about, you know, the tall man talks about the game and you play a good game. And for me, 4 is everybody lost. Even the tall man lost, because the tall man didn't get kind of a willing successor in Mike that he wanted. But at the same time, Mike got his brain pulled out of his head and had to kind of come to terms with the fact that Jody never came back. And then Reggie is by himself kind of going into the great unknown. So,
yeah.
You know, for me, there's a lot of, I don't know if downer is the right way, but it's very melancholic for me.
I just go melancholy with just a splash of nihilism.
A soupçon,
just a soupçon of nihilism, for flavor.
But yeah, I would say Ravager, however, I don't think there's any nihilism to be found. I think it's actually there's definitely some melancholy in it, but it is a much more, it somehow manages to be a very peaceful ending while also being I don't know if fist pump is the right way to say it.
We're going all spoilery, right?
Oh, like if you haven't seen Ravager, see Ravager.
See Ravager.
And then,
why are you listening to this if you haven't seen the movie? That's just weird.
And I guess we should give some kind of a, you know, plot, at least the through line of kind of what we're dealing with. So you got Reggie coming out of the desert, or at least he thinks. Basically, the first part of the movie is him going through a couple of kind of rehashing some different greatest hits, Phantasm set pieces, but not very good because they hadn't really found their footing yet, and they worked with no budget. Then things open up quite a bit when, after these first set pieces, he snaps awake in the nursing home, but what happens is he keeps bouncing between these different realities. So he will open his eyes and he's in the nursing home. Then he'll open his eyes and he's kind of on that same trail that he was looking for Mike. And then he'll open his eyes and he's in a kind of completely different situation. It's very disorienting, and I think that Reggie Bannister nails it in terms of showing that confusion and the desperation. He just acts the hell out of this movie. I cannot say enough how much I love Reggie Bannister in this movie.
And this is part of the reason why I want people who maybe weren't that crazy about Ravager the first time to go back and watch it. This story is fantastic. No pun intended. Like an FAN.
It's not fantastic. It's fantastic.
It's not
Capital
fantastic. It's fantastic. But it really is. And the as you were just saying there, the bouncing around, the disorientation stuff. Mm-hmm. is fantastic. It is done, and it's ramped up by Hartman to using different, just little camera moves, little camera tricks, different speeds, slightly different angles. And you really do get that sense, along with Reggie, that he is being literally thrown around through time. It's, again, no budget, but they are thinking, it's huge.
So creative, yes. And to do that with the minuscule amount of money they were doing with is such an accomplishment. And it's they keep kind of toying with you in terms of thinking that they've kind of pulled back the curtain and you know what's going on, because eventually after these different encounters where he's in the nursing home, he's on the trail of Mike, and he actually encounters the tall man. And there's also an interesting kind of like culmination interaction between him and the tall man, where basically the tall man says, like, I can make all of this go away. I can give you your life back. I can give you your family back. All I need is for you to look the other way and let whatever I'm going to do happen. And Reggie thinks long and hard about it, but he won't do it because he says, I'll do it if you give me back Mike and Jody. And obviously the tall man, like, that's a deal breaker for him.
See, again, Bryan, they're shooting for the rafters. This is Faustian shit. This is epic operatic stuff. This is you didn't have in movies before where the tall man offered you a bargain or I'll give you this if you give me this. You never did that. It was you're screwed. I'm taking him. He's mine. He's my bitch, and you're going to die. I don't know when, probably maybe 3 movies from now, or not at all. Who's to say? But the point is, you get the idea, right?
And it's what I really appreciated about those showdowns between Reggie and the tall man is that they preempt it with this scene that is so quiet but so well done, where in all the bouncing around, one of the places that Reggie goes to is Civil War era Morningside, or I'm guessing somewhere in the vicinity, where he wakes up in a bed next to Jebediah Morningside. And I've liked that scene every time, but I think what really hit me this time is showing that idea that, like, and I think there's a little bit of a meta conversation going that, like, Angus Scrimm is clearly, he doesn't have long left for this world, but Reggie is no spring chicken either, and just kind of seeing both of these guys in this quiet moment in a bed, knowing that, they don't, either one of them have a whole lot of time left, and kind of sharing that with one another before they kind of get back into the more adversarial kind of positions. I just really appreciated that. And it also gives that really great moment where Jebediah transitions into the tall man with nothing more than the scowl kind of coming over his face. That's
all I wanted to talk about was the magnificence of Angus Scrimm. Here's this kindly old man talking to, his room partner. And then, like you said, with the flick of a switch and the twitch of a brow, all of a sudden, he's not Jebediah anymore. And you just go, that, and that's why, he'll be remembered forever for as small a gesture as that, as the bigger ones and bigger moments that he had,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing to also consider with this movie is, like we talked about, kind of knowing what you're getting going into it. You also have to recognize that Angus Scrimm is 88, 89 years old. He will, like you said, have passed away by the time this movie comes out. And he had been, he'd been on the downswing for quite some time before that. So he's not well when he's making this movie. But it's also,
and yet he gets some of his best dialogue scenes in the whole series.
No, he actually, he has dialogue, and he gives, he has a back and forth with Reggie that goes more than him giving like a line and a half, and he nails it. But there are certain times where you can tell they're working with, they're doing whatever tricks they can to make him still look imposing when he's an aging man.
And that's why, again, I'm imploring people to go back and watch Ravager again, because when you see it with fresh eyes, and already knowing the aesthetic, etc., it's, I don't know. It's, it could be the best Phantasm story in terms of scale.
No,
it's like I said, it's epic. It's everything about this movie is epic except for the budget. And because we're from the Phantasm world where we started out with no budget, and I think you mentioned this, Bryan, that spirit really does carry through in this too.
100%. And it's, I know we've said the word budget more times than we've said the word Phantasm throughout the rest of the series, but like, it's, for me, that's the sticking point. Like, if this movie had another $500,000 to work with, I don't think the people who like dislike it as much as they do would still dislike it that much. Like, they were doing all of this with nothing, virtually nothing. And the fact that they are able to make what they were out of it is just, it blows me away every time. And it's also one of those things where my experience is the same every time, because I'm always worried that like, this is going to be the time where I watch it and the seams are going to show and I'm going to realize like, maybe this isn't great. And it always gives me that first 15 minutes where I'm like, yeah, I think this is going to be the time where I don't like it as much. And then literally by the end of the movie, I am crying every single time I see it.
No, and that's a 100% valid, statement. Now I see it, before, like I said before, I saw it as a victory lap, just a celebration of the series, and that the story had ended at Oblivion. And you know what? Maybe a part of me was wanting it to be that way because of the disparity in terms of, you know what I'm saying? Maybe part of me in my brain, was thinking that. But I do remember the first time watching it, even still loving it while seeing the seams. This time that I watched it, I think maybe I'm even loving it because of the seams and the love behind them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, people have given it grief because it looks like a fan film. But I'm just like, this, if that's the case, this is the best made fan film I have ever seen in my life. And it's made not just by a fan, but by a fan who clearly has talent.
And let's be clear here. There are some visual shots in this that are not great and don't play great. Mm-hmm. There's also some stuff that plays really good.
Yeah. And I think for me, the top tier of that is, so as the movie progresses, one of the kind of the big reveals is that it turns out that Reggie has spent the last probably decade or so since, or however long since Oblivion, he was captured and he'd been put in this contraption that was basically sapping information out of his brain while bouncing him back and forth among these various kind of realities. Now, you think that, okay, that answers it. This is what we're getting the rest of the time as he wakes up in kind of this dystopia where the tall man has taken over. There's this small band of fighters or rebels or whatever you want to call it, led by Mike. And you kind of think, okay, we're getting firmly into that Phantasm's End, Roger Avery script territory. But here's the thing. They still keep him bouncing around even after he gets out of there. And that's when the bouncing around gets at a kind of a technical and a craft level, I think is where this movie is at its best, because it keeps disorienting him, but in a way that the seams aren't showing. And so they do such a good job at doing close-ups of him and then popping out and he's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then, or just finding ways to kind of transition seamlessly into these other realities that, like, what's going on. Like, you don't know what's going on, but you can follow the action of the movie in a way that is really hard to pull off, because what they're trying to do is so hard, I think, to film. But Hartman is so good, and the way it was edited is so good that you are on this kind of bouncing around journey with him as he's in this as things progress. It kind of turns into a back and forth between this dystopian society and back to the nursing home. But they also, like, none of it is wasted. Like, when he goes to the nursing home, there's this sequence where Mike comes and he tells him about this dream he had. But the dream he had is kind of what's talking in reality about what happened in this dystopian future, where, you learn that Mike, after that sphere was taken out of his head, it didn't kill him. And he was able to kind of patch himself up and start to put this band of people together. But the way they frame it is just like, it's so hard to describe, but it's so well done.
Mm-hmm. No, it really is. Like I said, it's a great story, and it really is well done. It really is well done. Once it gets past that, as you said, the road adventure, the greatest hits of Reggie.
Mm-hmm.
Once it gets past that, it's a completely different beast. It's a different dynamics come into play. Mike has become independent and a leader who has his own sidekick,
mm-hmm. Chunk
and Chunk, but it does. So all of a sudden, at one point Mike has to remind Reggie. Or not, he doesn't have to, but he chooses to. He reminds Reggie that, I'll always look for you. Like, we'll always look for you. And here's a million theories. Is that in Reggie's head, wanting to make sure that he's not becoming obsolete to Mike, who he raised as his own son?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many alternate universes that this could go with the way they've done this, Yeah,
and the way I'm a little on the fence for how they exposition that. Not so much in how, but like whether or not they should have, because there is a line in kind of one of the scenes where Reggie is in the nursing home with Mike, and Mike tells him that, maybe there is something in what you're saying. I've been doing some reading, and there are various, schools of thought that put forth this idea of a membrane universe, where it's basically this giant cluster of like every multi-dimensional universe or every conceivable alternate universe are all bunched together. And there are places where the membrane's thin enough that people can pass through them.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where
that's too much for you. So you're saying I shouldn't get my science from the Phantasm movies? Is what you're saying?
I just wonder did that line need to be said, or do they give us enough about what's going on to just kind of let that go unsaid?
You know what I see it as? I see it as Mike reaching out to Reggie and trying to connect with him.
So it's not necessarily, and I think I appreciate that too, because it's, again, that idea of teasing us with a possible explanation that may or not be right, or may or not be the reality. where, it could be this membrane theory. It could be that all of this is happening in Reggie's mind as he's kind of in his last days, succumbing to dementia. It could all be that the tall man has been messing with him the entire time. And it could be all of the above. And I think that's why this movie works so well, because it offers these glimpses, like you said, of explanations, and comes the closest to any Phantasm movie of giving answers, but it also doesn't make anything so definitive that it removes your reading of any of the previous movies.
No, does it offer, does it offer answers, or does it offer expansion? Mm-hmm. I'd say it's closer to expansion than answers, but the possibilities that it's leading up to are very much at the heart of the series, of its whole 50s sci-fi vibe. Time travel, everyone's a sucker for time travel. Give me an alternate universe and I'm there. And I think, for these first 4 movies, we were so wrapped up in Mike's universe. And for me, it was completely, I have to rethink my whole philosophy now too. If I'm having 5 Ravager as a continuation, if I'm counting Ravager as a continuation now, then I don't have my happy ending in 4. Yeah. I don't get that anymore.
And for me, I get the happy ending that works so perfectly for this series, because it's multiple endings. And they're happening simultaneously. We get the quote unquote, the quote unquote climax with the tall man. That is, for me, almost purposely anticlimactic, because these movies for me have never been about kind of the narrative flow, or the kind of the narrative. I'm trying to think of how to best word this. Like, for me, it's all about how the emotions come together. And
yeah, because when they blow up the tall man, you're just showing a Roadrunner cartoon.
Yes,
we know
exactly. Yeah. There's no one is under any delusion that this is going to be the thing that kills the tall man. And so the real ending happens in the moments after that, where, again, Reggie wakes up in the nursing home, but he's kind of it's the end of the line. I think he wakes up, he has just fallen over after getting out of his room. The doctors around him are like, how did this happen? And so, things aren't going well, or he's on the home stretch. And this is where you get that membrane opening up into this other universe, which, is it reality? Is it a delusion? Is it one of 2 or multiple realities that could be taking place at the same time? But where he's kind of going into that reality where the tall man, everything is real, and it's not all in his head. And you have that discussion that it ties back to that discussion he had earlier, where he's talking about, do I want to die, quietly lying in a bed in this rundown nursing home, or do I want to go out on my feet, jamming 4 barrels of shotgun down the tall man's throat? And this is kind of giving both, and showing both the pros and cons of both, because as the sequence plays out, you see, in the Phantasm universe, or the tall man is real universe, he hops in that car that comes out of nowhere, by the way. We haven't heard from this is actually the first time we see Jody the entire movie. He comes out of nowhere, he mows down like this group of, the undead, saves the day, and comes and picks up Mike and Reggie. And they get in, and they kind of get to start driving off into the sunset. While in the quote unquote real world, he's succumbing to his dementia, but he's doing so with both Mike and Jody by his side, which again is so emotionally satisfying. But also, if you're looking at it narratively, it's like, well, how the hell is Jody in either one of these situations? Because either he died in a car wreck, because that's what we've been talking about the whole goddamn time. That's what all of this is.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Or he died at the end of 4 when Mike had to, kill him again. But he's in both of these. And, if it doesn't make sense narratively, it makes perfect sense as a conclusion of this movie, because, you get that shot of the three of them kind of in slow motion from the original walking into the White Room for the first time, as both of these kind of trajectories come to their conclusion. Either he's passing away quietly, or he's finally getting some rest in the back of the Cuda, and the trio is back together again. Yeah,
beautifully bookended, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When Mike says, is it Mike who says it?
I think it might be Jody. I think they give him another. I forget which one it is, but that's
because in the original movie the line is, "It's a hell of a way to end a trio."
And I think it's Jody, because I think it's Jody that says it in the.
No, Reggie says it in the original,
okay.
Isn't it? Oh no, we're horrible. Yeah. We should know that. We're fired. Get off the air. You're fired.
But
I'm fired too.
The excuse I'll give myself for why I don't know who says it in Ravager is because this is always the moment where I'm watching the movie through tears. Because
okay, I think it's Mike, because Mike is sitting beside Jody in the front seat and Reggie's in the back.
Gotcha.
Mike says, "It's a hell of a way to start a trio."
Mm-hmm. And yes, we might not remember who said what, but we do know.
But we
remember
get the sentiment, damn it. we really do, and it's so. I know there were complaints when the movie came out. There were people who said that this film was nothing more than fan service. I don't understand how the makers of the movie are fans. When I think of fan service, I think of them. Okay, are they catering to? What does that mean? It's the fifth movie in a franchise. Yeah, they're catering to the fans. They're the ones who are watching the movies. I'm confused by
if they were
statements like that.
If they were catering to the fans, wouldn't there have been some kind of a they finally did it? And kind of get to go off into the sunset and live their lives. It still ends on we still have no idea how we're going to beat the tall man. Or if you're reading, if your reading is that, this has all been in Reggie's mind, then it's Reggie passing away.
Do you see, do people not understand, Brian, why this is the best series to love? Because for whatever reason you like it, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter which membrane universe you come through, whether it's the first movie or whether it's Ravager and you hop all over the place. You'll follow the story the same, which is to say you won't. and you will love it for it, because while there is logic here, it's pretzel logic. It's logic that works and plays only by its own rules and by its creators' rules, but they always leave us hungry for more.
And I do appreciate this is the only Phantasm movie where a rap song plays over the end credits. So there is that. And also I love how in the credits you kind of get a taste for where things were going in kind of the future, because I think if I remember correctly, they took some unused footage or things that didn't really kind of pan out and kind of did some clip show work over the end credits. So you get these scenes of, I think it's Mike or Reggie firing a rocket in the middle of the Arctic at a giant ball and stuff like that. It's just enough of that hint of the fight goes on. And I think it's such a great, if you're looking at this thematically, we go out, we go out quietly, surrounded by our loved ones, or we go out fighting. In this case, the movie did both, in a way that doesn't seem like it's placating. And so I love it for that. Like I absolutely think they stuck the landing with this movie. Yes, there are issues with it, but I think as a satisfying conclusion, it's why this is my favorite series, because every one of them has something to offer, especially this one.
Yeah. Hi, Scott, Broken Record over here. Again, it's the way I used to see it and how I see it now are going to completely recontextualize it for me. And I'm excited about that. Because, as you said, if you go back and look at the stories, this one has, and for a conclusion, this kind of amazes me, but it has the most forward motion, I think, out of any of the movies. And when I say forward motion, I guess I mean like story-wise. It's not just trying to wrap things up; it's pushing new things. It's not just, it really does move the story forward in an exciting way that, again, if you need some fresh eyes on this, folks, I'm begging you, if you weren't that keen on Ravager the first time you saw it, give it a shot again, because the story is cracking. The performances, as we said, Reggie Bannister is, I honestly didn't think that he could be this good. I mean, I've always liked him in the movies, but it's a really moving performance. And again, watching it the other day, just hearing lately that he has been in some poor health in recent months, and that it kind of added an extra layer of meaning to it, but yeah, folks, I implore you, Bryan and I'm going to speak on behalf of Bryan.
Please do.
I'm going to. We're begging you, go back and watch Ravager. It is much, much better than I think it's been given a shake for.
And with that, I will say the only really big sticking point I have with this movie is that they have this amazing character in Rocky who has this great arc in 3, gets to ride off into the sunset, and only comes back in a post-credit scene just long enough to get groped by one of the new characters in the movie, by Chunk, and then just kind of have a couple back and forth lines and get into the car and ride off. Now, granted, she still gets to ride off to the sunset.
That's right.
But, oh man, like I can only hope that that it was so small, that her time was so small, because maybe she had other stuff going on and couldn't commit to being in the whole movie. But there's and that carries over to a little bit of a larger issue with, I don't know at this point if they should have bothered introducing new characters like Dawn and Chunk. They were fine, but for me, they just get in the way a little bit of what we're there for, and that's to kind of see Reggie, Mike, and Jody's arc kind of wrap up.
I don't know. I like Chunk. I thought he was a fun addition, because you got to have someone who's Mike's sidekick, that Reggie's not there. So that's kind of why I like Chunk. Although there was the dual Dawn / Jane. Yeah. Right. The Dawn song. You got to be careful how you say that.
Yeah.
might come out wrong.
Which for me, I feel like part of why that bothers me is because, like, I like that story. I like the only part of the first 15 minutes that I like is them playing with that idea of old horny Reggie at it again. But kind of
And
doing
this
it in a
time
way.
he was gonna get it.
He was gonna get it, but he's also
he
like
fell
he
asleep.
fell asleep and kind of getting to that aging idea, and it's he can't remember her name, so it's kind of hinting at those ideas that are going to be coming up. So I did appreciate that. I feel like they probably could have reworked that and had that be Rocky. Instead of introducing a new character. So
Right, and that guy at the gas station, that could have been Rocky.
Oh, go to hell.
And that farmer over there, that could have been Rocky.
It's a good idea, and I stand by
Brian loves Rocky. Brian loves Rocky.
Whatever.
Look, she looks fit in it. I gotta say, Gloria Lynn Henry looks fit in it, and like many things, I would love to see her in more stuff.
All right, so to kind of start wrapping up Ravager, just a little bit about the how it was received. We've told people to give it a second chance. Surprisingly, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 57%, which is significantly higher than Oblivion, which only had a 29%. So
What?
yeah, there were definitely more in the pro than the con. But I do think those people who disliked it really disliked it. Like Trace Thurman from Bloody Discussing and Horror Queers, he's great. We get along on a lot of stuff. Phantasm is not one of those areas. He is he never really got into the series, and so for him, Ravager was like the top 5 worst movies of 2016 for him. And that's kind of one of those things where like I can totally understand that. Like if Phantasm already isn't your bag, this movie is not going to do anything to change that.
No, but again, what's anything without context, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're seeing a low budget, a very low budget horror movie in a big forum,
Mm-hmm.
The money's all up there. Use your imagination a little bit. Okay.
I will say that I think this line from Martin Carlson of Consequence of Sound from a review he did kind of puts it as succinctly as possible. All formal complaints aside, Ravager is successful in its attempt to capture the spirit of the series. Phantasm has always been about family, the love between brothers and friends, and seeing Reggie and Mike together again, we can only feel the sincerity of their relationship.
There you go.
Exactly.
Boom.
So that's...
Take that, Trace.
Well, I already told him that from now on I will be telling people to watch the Horror Queer because Joe Lipset is now the only person who hosts that because Trace is now dead to me. So let's we've done this with all the other movies. We're going to get a little feedback from fans. We put it out there on Twitter what people thought about specifically Ravager, and then a little bit later we'll talk about people's kind of thoughts on the series. So
I got 0. I would like to thank 0 people for reaching out to me with your comments about the Phantasm series. No, really. Thank you. Nothing.
Couldn't have done it without you. Nobody.
I couldn't. No one.
So thoughts on we got some decent feedback for thoughts on Ravager. Alan Dorich at What Alan Watches. So he had apparently, and I didn't see it, but he had apparently first tweeted something that was a little bit more, we'll say, abrupt. And I think he deleted it because this one starts off.
Is it shit sandwich?
You can't print that. Let me try doing this a little softer. I was massively disappointed, and it's fine that you like it, though. I just feel Coscarelli and crew should have done a scaled-down version of the Roger Avery script instead of the last 2 films, which, as we've already said, I think that's what Ravager is. It's a scaled-down. Like, if you have $300,000, I think that's the closest you're going to come to the Avery script.
There's some of it in there. Yeah, for sure.
Peter Hearn, our good buddy from our Oblivion episode at
Never heard of him.
at Hearn-esque. Despite it seemingly being made for a bag of British chips, Ravager is incredibly moving and a wonderful swan song for the main cast. It's an amalgamation of fans' love letter interpretation mixed with the weirdo mythology of Coscarelli's long-running series. I liked it lots, boys.
I don't know what to say. I just had Peter's baby, and it's a boy, of course, named Angus. And well, the announcement will be later, but
Emily Von Sela from our Part 3 episode at Horrorella blog.
yeah,
Love it. Beautiful end cap to this story. Love the way it pulls the family note in at the end in both worlds and lets these friends wrap the story up together. Love the way it keeps with the rest of the series and makes sense, and also no sense at all. I'm not a huge fan of David Hartman's visual style, especially since it differs so much from the rest of the series, but the story more than makes up for it. And I love Reggie Bannister's performance. The ending is so beautifully bittersweet, and I love the film. Easy for me to say.
We love you, Emily.
Yes. Agreed. And then, last but not least for Ravager, we have Fingers to the Temple at Hero Researcher. It is hard to say, but this one is neck and neck with number 4 as my favorite. What is best about this film is the way its jarring, multi-dimensional narrative explains all the quirks and continuity errors throughout the franchise. Name one other series that covers this ass this well. And Reggie Reggie Bannister brings his A game here. The dementia plot is heartbreaking. The way this movie ends fills me with such hope and good vibes. I could not imagine a better end to this or almost any franchise. And then he also capped that off with the Tina Turner Simply the Best gif.
Well said. Very well said.
And so now we go into our favorite segment, Morningside Musings, which... No, we're not doing it. I've decided that this is going to be the one that I feel like the lines in this one are actually like he has dialogue. And first of all, I'm not going to transcribe all of his dialogue. We're not going to say all of his dialogue, and we're not going to come up with dumbass meanings for the dialogue. But I think what we should do, because I don't think either one of us has gotten it fully right, I think we need to take one more crack at saying boy in full tall man.
Quote unquote, fully right. Yeah. Would you accept partially or not in the ballpark?
I was being diplomatic. Yeah, we both have sucked at this, so we're going to try it one more time.
You know who does the best tall man? Emily.
She knocked us on our ass with that. It was pitch perfect.
Yeah.
So don't expect anything close to that here, but I'm going to give it a try. From the diaphragm. Boy.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I mean, if I'm going to end on one, right? It's not bad. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. Now I have to watch my volume. So imagine the tall man is like.
This is boy on Ravager's budget. Just think of it that way.
He's mad, but the grandkids are sleeping in the other room. So he has to admonish Mike in the closet very quietly. Okay. So it's the tall man whispering, boy. Okay.
I thought that was it.
No. Boy. Boy. Thank you.
I think there was a little Jerry Lewis in that last one.
It was.
Then.
Well, I wanted to use the Jerry Lewis for the Daniel Roebuck with the dancing around the barn with the high and the axe and the hitting, but I didn't. So.
All right. So, one last thing for specific to Ravager before we get into our wrap up, and that is the Scrim Award for this installment. Highlight favorite aspect of the film, and what would that be for you, Mr. Drebit?
Okay. I am actually changing it up from my first 4 entries as Angus Scrim. I awarded Angus Scrim my personal Scrim Awards for the first 4 movies. This film, Ravager, the final in the series, I am giving the Scrim Award to one Reggie Bannister, who shows that an actor can mature with grace, with style, with kick-ass energy, and with a great sense of humor. And I love the man for that, and he should be holding this Scrim Award very tall.
And stay on stage, Mr. Bannister, because you are getting a second Scrim Award, because that is exactly who I'm giving it to. I mean, you know, for all the things this movie does, ultimately, this is Bannister's show. And if he wasn't up to the task, this movie wouldn't work. But he is 100% up to the task, and he does everything you love about Reggie and takes Reggie to realms that you didn't know that he would be capable of doing. So yes, 100% Reggie Bannister. This is an amazing performance in an amazing movie. So well done, sir.
Insert crowd applause here. Good.
All right. So now just want to take a little bit about kind of wrapping up the series, some final thoughts, things like that. And we do have one more round of we put out a final call asking people to give their thoughts on kind of what the Phantasm series means to them. We got some really good stuff in here, so I'm looking forward to checking this out. So first we have the New World Pictures podcast of horrors at the New World Pod. Says, I don't know if I can say everything this means to me in a tweet, but for me, it not only transfixed me in my teens, but has kept the magic going for decades. Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. It's, you know, it can mean different things to you as you get older and evolve with you in ways that not every movie can do or every series can do. Emily comes back to tell us that it's something I discovered at the right moment and will be a favorite until the day I die. Short and sweet. Sean at Finz, F-I-N-Z. My first encounter with cosmic horror. I forget that sometimes that this is cosmic horror. You know, I forget those kind of sci-fi elements. Modern horror focuses on rules and gameplay, but these films had few goals or explanations. Just blood, medieval tech from a fucked up issue of Omni, a relentless villain, and dream logic that still makes me anxious. Perfect for 12-year-olds.
You see here, it's completely right, though. No matter everything that every person has said so far is 100% true. All of it. It's all just different perspectives, but it's all saying the same thing. Love it.
Fingers to the Temple comes back to tell us Phantasm is a series that reminds me that first impressions don't have to be the last impressions. I enjoy the series more each time I run through it, and it is a series, not a franchise like so many other IPs. So him making that distinction ought to sit well with you, Scott.
Oh, yeah. All right. I remember that tirade. Yeah.
Scott, he at one time was not and by one time, I mean at the beginning of a podcast episode, he wasn't a fan of the word franchise. And then by halfway through that same episode, he was fine with the word franchise.
Yeah.
I think this next one might be my favorite, from Ramon W.R. Jr. At Inkaholic 90. It brought my family together. My mother didn't like scary movies, but she'd be there with my father and I assume he means when they were watching Phantasm. Laugh out loud. It made me like scary movies more. So, like, how many movie series do you know that can say they've brought family members together?
Right? That's crazy.
Ed Marcus at LeGrand Rusty. This franchise will always have a place in my heart. Always scary, sometimes nostalgic, always scrim.
Always Scrim. Now there's a podcast name. Always Scrim.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a new addition to the Corpse Club podcast network.
Right. We can start with his first film, Young Abraham Lincoln, and we'll go from there.
We'll do a whole episode about his 30-second cameo in Chopping Mall. That'll be good.
There's lots to do.
And we got last but not least in terms of the tweets, J-Dub of the Dead at the Juice 45. Each film is very much a product of its time, and I can't think of any other series that best reflects the change in horror from the 70s to today. Sometimes it gets very weird and very dumb, but it's always unique and original. So yeah.
That's an interesting observation, because I've always kind of felt that no matter which decade it's in, the Phantasms kind of stay themselves. I would say, with the exception of 2, which very much is shiny and big in 80s. But again, right? He's not wrong. It's a different perspective, and that's why we love this series.
And so I think that's all the tweets, but I think you have one last little piece of kind of special something.
I do. We received an email from a gentleman by the name of Dirk Marshall on September the 13th. And I'm going to read it for everyone now, because it was quite lovely, and I think it encapsulates for a lot of people what this series means.
And edited slightly for time.
Possibly. I don't know.
Might just read the whole damn thing.
I just might get mellifluous. Hello, Scott. My name is Dirk Marshall, and I host a podcast called VHUS. In quotations, no, this is going swim. I should do audiobooks, I think.
Just as if they don't. He
was raised in a mom and pop store. The premise is, just keep going, Scott. Just keep going. The premise is each episode is about a film, and the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. Teen witch with a witch, of unknown origin with an exterminator, deadly games with Santa, etc. You know what? As a side note, I believe our very own Heather Wixon has been on this show. I think. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
But I believe she has. I came across your podcast episodes on Phantasm and thought you might enjoy this. My father had a rental business for camcorders and then VCRs as well. When the home video boom happened, he added VHS, and we moved next to an arcade that also was miniature golf. There I had a travel TV and a faux wood-paneled top-loader VCR under a table right behind the returns and popcorn machine, where I could pull from the shelves and retire beneath the tablecloth to watch anything. It was there where I first crossed paths with the tall man. I was transfixed. The score, the wildness, and the imagination was a perfect storm for me. Cut to me trying to show it to friends who preferred Freddy or Jason. I was the weirdo or outcast even in my own social circle. That is until Phantasm 2. Suddenly my friends were on board with the action sequences, and I got to share more Phantasm with friends. Then years later, I was in high school, and all my friends had dropped out due to the very awful nature of my small-town high school. I stayed as a fuck you to the town. In walks Phantasm 3, a film that takes Phantasm on the road, and it arrives at a time when I really wanted to get the fuck out of there. I needed it. Phantasm 4 came at another crossroads, my first solo apartment. I didn't know it existed, and when I watched it alone, it really reminded me of these characters who have almost always been there for me. The fact that all these people have continued to work together to make these films was impactful and emotional. I really once again needed this. Jump to 2016. I am married. I have a kid. And all seems sorted. I had no idea Ravager was a thing, and here they were again. I knew Angus wasn't well, and the idea of these actors and creative minds being back again was extremely emotional to me. I knew this was the end despite what anyone would do with the name. Angus is gone, and he was always there for me, lurking in the dark saying, "Boy." At the end, I cried. Unexpectedly, I explained to my wife what these films mean to me. I am extremely grateful to Don Coscarelli and everyone involved for every shred of Phantasm. The theme kicks off spooky season for me and my family every year. Thank you for reading this and for your time. I also very much appreciate what you and Bryan are doing with this series. Please keep being you, Dirk Marshall.
Well, Dirk, I think I might cry again, but that's something I can deal with on on another at another time. Thank you, Dirk. We love that email. We love getting that, and we just love hearing what this series means for other people because it just means so much to us. So thank you for taking the time to share that with us.
100%, Dirk. Thank you so much for listening to the series. And what I love about this email is you could switch out names and a few details, and it could be anyone who loves the series. Mm-hmm. And you could jumble around the paragraphs to keep up with Phantasm continuity. You know what? That's another beautiful thing about the Phantasm series. If you came in at Ravager, you have 4 films to travel back in time to. If you started out with the original, like me, you got to move forward in time with these characters and grow with them and age with them. And I think what this letter just beautifully states is how much movies can affect you and be there for you, and how this particular film series has touched you like it has us. So thank you so much, Dirk.
So before we get to final thoughts from our end, do we dare try and rank the 5 Phantasm movies?
All right. Is this like canon now? If we do this, this will be in the...
Oh yeah, no, this is the same rules as when we did the choose one or the other episode where
okay.
Some of them might be gone forever based off of our choices.
Okay. So this is going in like the podcasting records.
Yes.
Permanently.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Honestly, though, I don't know if I can. Like I've done it before, and I've ranked the movies, and it's changed and it's kind of gone all over the place. But this last time, watching these movies for this retrospective, they come together in a way that is more than the sum of their parts. So because it's telling this story that is...
You brought up this idea, man. Quit stalling, dude. I'll go. You take some time.
You go.
Because mine is completely different than what it used to be, almost. The first film and the last film stay the same. So the first film, number 1 would be the original Phantasm. Number 2, up with a bullet, is Ravager. Number 3 is Oblivion. 4 is Lord of the Dead. 5 is 2.
I think we're pretty close, actually. So if I'm going to go 1, Ravager, 3. So I'm saying number 3 for me is part 3, Lord of the Dead.
Yeah.
This last one, they're such different movies. I think I'm going 4 and 2, and that's just 4 used to be my least favorite one, and then this last viewing, I got so much more out of it. And I think the other thing to remember too is that when I say, when I give this order, we're also talking about the difference between like an 8 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. Like, I love all of these movies and I rate all of them very highly. But
for sure,
if I had to order them, that would be my order.
I mean, if I'm pulling apart, the best horror movies of 1988, I'm going to have Phantasm 2 on there without question. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to say, in this series, get to the back of the line, boys. It's a pretty high bar, and you're just not clearing it for me. Okay, I love you, but sit on the bench.
But I think ultimately, what really kind of takes me aback about this series is that even though it was under the direction of Don Coscarelli the entire time, he's writing them, he's directing all but the last one. I only really realized in this, as we were doing research for this, that it's not like he made one and had the rest of them planned out. This isn't like the Marvel cinematic multiverse or anything like that. Like, he was kind of starting with blank paper every time he was making a new one of these. So to have kept coming up with things that are so interesting and new, but still feeling part of the same overall story arc is just something that I don't think can be topped in any other franchise. I talk a lot about how Hellraiser is probably my favorite horror movie of all time, but you want to talk about a dip in quality over the course of an entire series, it absolutely dive bombs. This is a series as a series, it is my favorite series of all time, and I don't think
it's the gold standard.
I don't think there's going to be one that beats it for me, because this is a series of movies that is malleable in ways that are good, and not just being used as shortcuts or excuses. That it has a multitude of meanings without seeming like it was just not well thought out. And it's a series that kind of just lives inside me. Like, these are movies that I feel in ways that I don't feel with other movies, even ones that I really, really love. Like, they're just kind of a part of me. And it's a series that, like, even as we're wrapping up this retrospective, I find myself just kind of wanting to go back and watch them again. So these are movies that will never get old. I will never get tired of these movies, and they will always have the most special place in my heart. And I'm just so grateful and glad that they exist.
I 158% agree. And you know what? I just thought of an old review of the original Phantasm. I think it's from one of Leonard Maltin's books. And he said something along the lines of the Three Stooges in a haunted house.
Okay.
And there's another perspective for you.
Well, and that's the thing. I think I've talked about this, where, like, I was at a drive-in screening for Phantasm a few years ago, and I'm watching it, and, like, there's this group behind me that are just kind of, like, chuckling their way through it and just talking about what a ridiculous movie it is. And it's one that they had clearly seen multiple times. And it, like, I started kind of grinding my teeth until I realized, like, yeah, they're laughing with it in ways that I wouldn't laugh with it, but they also clearly genuinely love it for, as batty and off the wall as they interpret it. And so, they may not love it the same way I do, but they still love it. And again, that goes back to that idea of, like, you can love it in a lot of different ways, and every one of them is valid.
That is some straight up Silver Sphere truth bombs right there.
Oh man. Well, anything else, my good man?
If you're out there and you haven't seen the Phantasm series, if you like horror that's a little left of center, something a little different, something that spans generations and families. And it's about friendship and killer dwarves and ice cream men and other dimensions. It's about so many things, and it gets richer the more you bring to it, the more you come into its world. So no, I'm not starting a Phantasm cult, if that's what this sounds like, some kind of recruitment audio tape. But I will just say, if you haven't seen them, give them a shot. You could be pleasantly surprised, and if you are drawn into this world, wonderful. For those of us who have been watching Phantasm for a while now, or a long while, or a short while, I just hope that you've listened to this series and shared in the love and camaraderie that we have for these films. And yeah, that's it. Phantasm forever.
Here, fucking here, my friend. Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of this Phantasm retrospective. I just want to thank everybody who has joined us on this journey through all 5 films. We hope we have given you some additional perspective on movies that either you already liked or maybe have gotten some motivation to give a revisit, because we absolutely love these movies, and we hope you do too. And so with that, we'd like to thank Bryan, our engineer, for helping us out each and every episode. And as always, we want to thank our listeners, including those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Be sure to visit corpseclub.com, check out our latest episodes. You can also sign up to become a member, which will get you access to some different goodies, including some bonus episodes. We've got a variety of bonus commentaries on there, and just a kind of tease for the future. You might see or hear a Phantasm-related commentary in not too far in the future if you sign up to become a member. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review helps. You could also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach us anytime at contact@corpseclub.com, or on Twitter @DailyDeadNews or @CorpseClub, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.